in a few days. I vividly recall being completely devastated when I read that note. They had taken Allison and her pals on a beach trip, but all I received was a happy birthday card and a $50 gift card. Many aspects of my childhood had been unfair, but here was where I drew the line. It was so disheartening and callous that I decided to leave that day and never look back. I had a few friends who were ready to let me stay with them until I could find and afford my own place. It wouldn't take long because the firm where I was interning was likely to recruit me full-time once the internship concluded. I only needed a place to reside for 2 months at the most. I packed my belongings and moved in with a friend without informing my parents or sister, and I have not looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to want me to come back. They did phone me on my birthday, the day after I moved out, but not to wish me. They said they'd be returning shortly and recommended I hire a plumber to fix the tap. I informed them that I was no longer living at home and had moved out, hoping that this information would elicit a response from them. But no such luck. My folks seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't mind. That was it. That was my final proper conversation with my family. Since then, I haven't seen them or heard from them again. My friends occasionally told me about Allison, which kept me up to date on her life, but that was about it. They knew nothing about my parents, and my parents knew nothing about me. I've worked hard for the past 2 years and finally got my own place. It's hardly a mansion, but it's a lovely apartment in a desirable neighborhood. The rent is reasonable for my wage, which is fantastic because most people my age haven't been able to accomplish this as quickly. I'm pleased with how my life has turned out, and I've done my best to keep my family out of my thoughts. Allison recently married a businessman nearly 10 years older than her and is now living it out in California. I thought everything was fine in my family until 2 days ago, when I received a call from my uncle. He told me I needed to come visit my parents right away because they had been in a terrible car accident and wanted to see me. I went to the hospital as soon as possible since, of course, I'm not so heartless. When I arrived, I discovered that they had already been in the hospital for a few days and were recovering from their injuries. A truck had hit their car. They had survived, but with significant injuries. They didn't have health insurance because my father had always believed that if we looked after ourselves, we wouldn't need to go to the hospital. This was by far one of the most ridiculous opinions I've ever heard. My parents immediately phoned my sister, but she informed them that she would not return or assist them. Apparently, it was tacky of our parents to seek financial assistance from her wealthy husband so soon after their marriage. She did not want her spouse to think she was a gold digger. She also didn't want to travel back since she couldn't leave her home and 2 children, who weren't even her own. They were her husband's children from a previous marriage, but she was too preoccupied with playing happy family with her husband's family to see her own parents in the hospital following a tragic automobile accident. She couldn't have helped, even if she had wanted to. Without her husband's assistance, she would not have been able to purchase even the flight tickets back home. After all, she's now a stay-at-home parent, caring for children who aren't her own. So much for being the favorite daughter and golden child. I couldn't believe they didn't even call me first. It became even more irritating when my uncle informed me that my parents now expected me to finance their medical expenditures. It's a large sum of money, and if I agreed, I'd have a difficult time recovering financially. I don't want to spend so much money, especially on people who have never cared about me or shown me love throughout my life. I know they have other family members that can care for them. Even if I don't pay, somebody else will. However, my parents appear to be more worried with the shame of begging others for money. They warned me that borrowing money from others would be more humiliating than borrowing from me because they'd have to repay it sooner than I would. That is what they said when they asked me to pay their debts. They even assured that I would receive my money back quickly. I do not know what to do. I'm in a bad situation. I can either disgrace my parents by refusing to pay their medical bills and focusing on myself, or I may pay for them, lose my money, and then wait indefinitely for them to repay it. To be completely honest, I don't want to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and I've had a horrible relationship with my family for as long as I can remember. They're like strangers to me now, so I don't feel inclined to assist them. But if I don't help, am I no better than Allison? That would be difficult to accept. Is it wrong of me not to want to help my parents pay their hospital costs after such a tragic accident? Update number 1. Hello there, I've decided not to aid my parents. It was a difficult decision to make, but I was confident that their bills would be handled by someone else. They have nothing to worry about. They just contacted me because they didn't want to ask their other relatives. They were overly egoistic. I haven't told them about my decision yet. How do you tell your family that you're not going to help your parents pay for their medical bills after such a tragic accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I met them. After reading the comments, I realized I was still subconsciously competing with Allison. Because she didn't help our parents, I felt compelled to step up and prove that I was the better daughter, or whatever. I guess I'll never be able to get rid of that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's simply who I am now. The majority of the comments criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I agree. It was quite silly of my father to discourage it. If I had been a part of their lives, I would have ensured they were insured. He didn't even have his automobile insured since he believed he was such a good driver. They're happy the collision was caused by the truck driver, since else they'd have had to pay for the auto repairs themselves. As for my parents' financial position, which many of you have inquired about, I would say they are fine. They are neither rich nor poor. My father is the head of sales at his company, while my mother works in human resources at a smaller firm. Their combined salary is sufficient to allow them to live well, especially since they are no longer responsible for supporting me or Allison. Allison and I did not have to worry about money growing up, but we also couldn't afford to live extravagantly. We were middle class, and my parents still are. I don't see why they can't pay their own medical bills. If they can borrow money and promise to repay it eventually, they will undoubtedly be able to pay their own debts. They haven't provided me a clear explanation for why they can't, and I doubt I will ever find out. Update number 2. I told my parents that I would not fund their bills. They had been contacting me for the previous week, and yesterday I knew I couldn't just ignore them and wait till they were released from the hospital. So I answered their calls and told them I'd thought about it and didn't feel compelled to help. As expected, they did not take it well. My mother tore into me, shrieking as loudly as she could with her broken ribs. She called me ungrateful and used the usual slurs. My father, on the other hand, just told me that I was no longer his daughter and hung up once my mother had finished yelling. It didn't hurt like I expected. Honestly, it had been a long time since I felt like their daughter. I can't recall when I last felt loved by my parents. They hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, on purpose, because I moved out after they snubbed me on a significant birthday. In many ways, I had never truly had parents. I'm just going to keep living my life as I have for the last 2 years, and maybe even before that. This decision has little impact on me, despite my parents' expectations. Unfortunately, after my talk with my parents, my uncle called to give me another earful. I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't want this from him either. They can think anything they want about me. It doesn't matter anymore. Later, my uncle texted me to let me know that my parents might still ask other family members for money. He also indicated that my parents had decided to use the wedding fund they had put up for me and Allison. They had already spent more than half of it on Allison's wedding, and what remained was squandered on a trip to Europe. That's why they had almost little savings left and couldn't meet their medical bills. So, the riddle is solved. Of course, my uncle told me all of this to make me feel terrible, but all I felt was relief that I hadn't wasted my hard-earned money on their expenses. They had carelessly wasted their own cash, which was not my fault. It was not my responsibility that they did not have insurance owing to their erroneous ideas. They could beg money from family or go to hell, but I was not going to give them anything. They were no longer entitled to anything from me, including my time and money. Update number 3. Hey, something pretty strange happened today, and I need to get it off my chest. I haven't been able to inform my friends about what has been going on, because most of the people I know have only known me for a short time. I don't think I want to share anything about my family history with these people, so Reddit is all I have. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke with my folks. Allison showed up at my apartment a few hours ago, around the evening. Her unexpected visit astonished me, first and foremost because I did not expect her to know where I lived. Apparently, one of our high school friends told her about the neighborhood where I lived, and she asked around to find out exactly where I was. That is a lot of effort for her to do simply to meet me, of all people. She looked and acted far differently than I remembered. She's gotten more polished and sophisticated, which is a significant change from the way she used to speak in high school. Now she sounds more ladylike and behaves better. Her fashion sense has evolved, as has her jewelry, and her makeup appears more sophisticated. It felt as if I wasn't even speaking to Allison. But one thing has not changed: who she is as a person. I guess you can't put cosmetics on your heart and instruct people to name it Mrs. Davis, as she did to herself. Her personality and ideas have undoubtedly not changed. She knocked on my door, and I let her in. I was startled to see her, but also interested as to why she had stopped by. I decided to hear her out. After some small conversation about her life, in which she unpromptedly told me everything she'd been up to and boasted about how wonderful her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy man, I politely nodded through her presentation. She talked about how she had nothing to worry about but her cuticles and even began urging me to do the same, telling me how underappreciated being a traditional housewife was.